6,229 feet. That's how high Lake Tahoe sits above sea level right now, and it's still climbing. Most people hear that and think, great, we need the water, problem solved. But there's a group of scientists who hear that number and feel something very different. Concern, because beneath this beautiful lake, beneath 39 trillion gallons of crystal clear alpine water, the ground is moving. Stay with me, because what you're about to learn could change how you see this lake forever. Let's start with what's actually happening. Lake Tahoe sits on the border of California and Nevada, nestled inside the Sierra Nevada mountain range at an elevation most people would associate with a ski resort. Not a lake the size of a small sea. It holds enough water to cover the entire state of California in 14 inches of water. It is, by any measure, one of the most powerful bodies of water on the continent. And right now, after years of record snowfall, back-to-back atmospheric rivers, and relentless rainfall across the Sierra Nevada basin, it is filling up. 6 feet above its natural overflow rim doesn't sound like much, but when you're talking about a lake with 191 square miles of surface area, every single inch of elevation represents an astronomical volume of water pressing down, pressing outward, pressing into the rock below. And here's the part the headlines aren't telling you. Lake Tahoe didn't form by accident. It was carved by tectonics, the same geological forces that split continents apart. The basin sits inside what geologists call a graben, a block of Earth's crust that dropped between two parallel fault lines millions of years ago. Those fault lines are still there. They never went away. They're simply waiting. The West Tahoe Fault, the North Tahoe Fault, the Genoa Fault on the Nevada side. These are not minor geological footnotes. These are active fault systems sitting beneath or directly adjacent to one of the most populated mountain resort regions in the western United States. USGS data confirms that the Tahoe region has experienced earthquakes in the magnitude 6 to 7 range in the geologically recent past, and the potential for a major seismic event has never been fully ruled out. So now you have the picture: a massive ancient fault network, a lake that's currently sitting above its natural overflow rim, and trillions of gallons of new water arriving every season. Which brings us to the science that should be keeping people up at night. Here's a term you need to know: reservoir-induced seismicity. It's a mouthful, but the concept is straightforward, and it has been confirmed in dozens of locations around the world. When a large body of water accumulates rapidly, its sheer weight increases the stress on the rock beneath it. Water also seeps into microscopic cracks in fault rock. And when water infiltrates a fault line, it reduces the friction holding the fault together. In mechanical terms, it lowers what geologists call the effective normal stress on the fault plane. The most well-documented case, the Hoover Dam, Lake Mead, Nevada, where engineers noticed earthquake clusters shortly after the reservoir began filling in the 1930s. The Koyna Dam in India. The Zipingpu Reservoir in China, which some seismologists believe may have contributed to conditions leading up to the catastrophic 2008 Sichuan earthquake that killed nearly 70,000 people. These aren't fringe theories. They're published peer-reviewed science. The U.S. Geological Survey acknowledges reservoir-induced seismicity as a legitimate geophysical phenomenon. Now, is Lake Tahoe the same situation as a newly built dam? Not exactly. Lake Tahoe has been here for millions of years. The faults beneath it have coexisted with the lake for longer than humans have existed. But scientists distinguish between a lake at equilibrium, where fault stress has adjusted over geological time, and a lake experiencing a rapid short-term surge. That's the critical difference. Lake Tahoe's water level typically fluctuates between 6,220 and 6,229 feet, depending on the season. But in recent years, driven by atmospheric rivers and record Sierra Nevada snowpack, the lake has swung rapidly from near drought lows to surging highs, well above the natural rim threshold. The rate of change matters enormously. Fault systems that have slowly adapted to a lake's presence are not the same as fault systems being subjected to sudden, large increases in water load over months, not millennia. Dr. Stephen Wesnowski at the University of Nevada, Reno, one of the country's leading experts on Sierra Nevada fault systems, has documented that multiple faults in the Tahoe Basin are late Holocene active, meaning they've moved within the last 10,000 years. That's yesterday in geological time. Here's the good news, and there is genuine good news here. Lake Tahoe is one of the most scientifically monitored bodies of water in the United States. The USGS, Northern California Seismic Network, tracks microseismic activity in and around the Tahoe Basin continuously. The Nevada Seismological Laboratory at UNR operates additional stations on the Nevada side. GPS ground deformation sensors can detect millimeter-level movement in the Earth's crust. What are they seeing right now? Elevated microseismic activity, small earthquakes in the M1 to M2.5 range, which is not unusual for this region. But scientists are watching whether frequency or clustering changes in conjunction with the water level rise. They're also monitoring hydrological pressure, specifically whether the extreme water load is measurably deforming the lake basin bedrock. Early GPS data has shown minor ground movement consistent with water loading in high precipitation years. The short answer, nothing catastrophic is imminent, but the data patterns are not being ignored. Here's where this story becomes bigger than just Lake Tahoe. Climate scientists studying the Sierra Nevada have documented what they call weather whiplash, the phenomenon where extreme drought years are now being followed by extreme wet years with increasing frequency and intensity. The mid-range, moderate precipitation years are disappearing. For a geologically active basin like Tahoe, this is significant. If the lake is oscillating between historically low levels and historically high levels with greater frequency and amplitude, the cumulative stress on underlying fault systems is a serious long-term variable. California's Department of Water Resources projects that atmospheric rivers will intensify in frequency and strength through the coming decades, driven by warming Pacific sea surface temperatures. What we're seeing today with Lake Tahoe at 6,229 feet may not be an anomaly. It may be the new baseline. And that's the part that keeps geologists up at night. Not the possibility of one event, but the long-term pattern of events stacking on top of each other, year after year, cycle after cycle. Let's be direct about the human stakes here. Over 50,000 people live year-round in the Tahoe Basin across California and Nevada. During peak season, that number balloons to over 250,000 tourists and visitors on any given weekend. The region generates over $5 billion annually in tourism revenue. A significant seismic event near Lake Tahoe would not just threaten lives and property in the immediate basin. Geologists have modeled scenarios where a large fault rupture could generate a seiche, essentially a seismic tsunami wave within the lake, capable of sending walls of water across the shoreline. This is not a reason to panic. Modern geophysical monitoring is extraordinarily sophisticated. Emergency management systems exist, but understanding the risk in its full, unfiltered form is the first step toward appropriate preparation. The scientific consensus right now is nuanced, and you deserve to hear it in nuance, not in a doom scroll headline. Point 1. Lake Tahoe's current water level elevation is not by itself evidence that an earthquake is coming. Correlation is not causation. The lake has reached elevated levels before without triggering significant seismic events. Point 2. The underlying fault systems in the Tahoe Basin are genuinely active on geological timescales and do pose a long-term seismic hazard regardless of water levels. That hazard is real and independent of this story. Point 3. The combination of rapid water level fluctuations, documented fault activity, and climate-driven intensification of precipitation cycles creates a data environment that warrants careful, sustained scientific monitoring, which fortunately is exactly what is happening. Scientists are not alarmed. They are attentive. And that distinction matters enormously when we talk about how communities near geological hazard zones should be preparing. Here's what I want you to take away from this. Lake Tahoe is one of the most extraordinary geological objects on the planet. It is a window into deep time, into the tectonic forces that have shaped the western United States over millions of years. The same violent geological history that created this lake also left the fault lines that run beneath it. That's not terrifying. That's just the truth of living on a dynamic living planet. What is worth paying attention to is this. As our climate system swings harder and faster between extremes, we are adding a new variable into ancient geological equations. The rock beneath Lake Tahoe has been adjusting to the weight of that water for millions of years, but it has never had to adjust to a climate system accelerating at the speed we're currently generating. Scientists are watching, monitoring stations are running, and that's exactly how it should be. But stay curious. Ask the harder questions, because the Earth doesn't always announce what it's doing. Sometimes the only way to know is to be paying very close attention. If this kind of deep dive science storytelling is what you want more of, there's a subscribe button somewhere around this video. Hit it because we're just getting started. This channel goes where the mainstream science coverage doesn't, into the weird, the underreported, and the genuinely important. Here's your question for today, and I genuinely want to hear your answer. Do you live near Lake Tahoe, or have you visited? Drop a comment below and tell me, does knowing this geological story change how you feel about the lake? I read every single comment in the first 24 hours. Let's talk about it, and a like on this video genuinely helps the algorithm show it to more people who care about this stuff. If you learned something today, that's worth a click.